Hi, this is Shelby here to talk to you about last week and then looking forward for next week. So as you know, I've been grading week 1 and 2 assignments. There's a lot of confusion due to some mistakes on my part, but I tried to, I have fixed those mistakes and also just be open about my grading criteria. So just to reiterate, I'm obviously looking for if things are on time, and if they're not, I just take 1 point off regardless of the total points of the assignment. Completeness, did you answer all the questions? Sometimes within questions, there's like 2 parts, so making sure that you read the question carefully and actually responded to both of them. And then depth of understanding, so understanding of the material and comprehension, and then depth of reflection. So both of those 2 are kind of like, at equal standing, and I try to weigh those out fairly. So this is a service learning class, and reflection is really important, and I talked about that from the beginning. So, I need to see that you didn't just respond based on the first thing that came to your mind, and maybe the first thing that came up is this incredibly deep, thing, and that's entirely possible for some. But I just want to see that you spend some time with it, And then as far as the time requirements, I know that can be misleading sometimes maybe because it'll say, oh, only 15 minutes, but those are just guidelines, so keep in mind that whatever it takes for you to truly reflect on these topics is what you need to allocate for. So let me know if you have any questions, though, still moving forward. And then looking back on grading everyone's assignments, I want to thank you all again for being so open and responsive on your forums and assignments in an online format. I really thought it would be a lot different, so it's pretty cool to see how much everyone's opening up in this space. So that's really great, and it creates a nice learning environment for everyone. And then just a few topics I wanted to touch on after reading all of the forum posts. So normally, if I were in my, normal setting and comfort zone, I would just set up some small group conversations in person or in a classroom, and then we'd have a big classroom discussion. But since we can't do that, I just get to talk at you about this stuff, unfortunately. But please let me know if you want to keep the conversation going. I'm more than happy to have a phone conversation or like a one-on-one Google chat, So let me know if you want to keep talking about this stuff. So the first thing that I want to touch on is this concept of white privilege. There isn't a service learning class I've ever been in that hasn't brought up white privilege. It's really prevalent in our society, just talking about it in general, and it makes a lot of sense. So I wanted to take some time to address it, and I thought the best way I could do that would be to talk about my own experiences with reflecting on my own white privilege. But before I do that, I want to throw in this offering to everybody about tracking your emotions. So these readings and assignments are asking potentially deep things and things close to us and our lived experiences, right? So everyone's going to have different responses, whether it's, this is awesome, I finally get this because this reading said it this way, or like, well, you just described my life, this is awesome. Or in the middle, like, I don't really get it, or this doesn't really make sense, or maybe they're kind of full of it, the author, I don't know. And then the end of the spectrum, which is like, this is not true, this article, I don't agree with anything in this paper. All of those responses are completely valid in the sense that they are your responses that are from your lived experiences and who you are as a person, right? So I'm not here to tell you that any of those responses are right or wrong, and that's certainly not how I'm grading. But I do want to offer, again, since this is a service learning class, for you to challenge yourself to reflect, to notice for one, and reflect deeply on what kinds of responses you're having to the readings. And try to do something, try to shift from your brain, which is hard because you're, intellectual college students, right, into, this is going to be cheesy, your heart, right, and your emotions and your thoughts and your feelings, right? So instead of this made me happy or upset because it said this and that's not true, or that's totally true. A little bit deeper than that, right? That's still in your head. That's like analyzing the facts and what's present. Try to think of why you might be responding that type of way. So what life experiences do you have that might be informing it, or what are your values and opinions on stuff? So that's just an offering to everybody, regardless of your reactions. So back to white privilege. I am from Orange County, California. It's a privileged community in Southern California, if you don't know. There's a lot of wealth there. My family was middle class, but nonetheless, there was a lot of wealth around me, and my friends had a lot of wealth. So I was trying to figure out this problem I saw in society, and just work out how, I thought that if you worked hard, you were rewarded for that, right? And that things would get better for you. So I had friends who were from low-income communities, and it seemed like, their parents worked hard and they worked hard. Some of them actually left school to support their families, right? Left high school to support the family. So there's lots of hard work going on, and yet, they still seem kind of like trapped in poverty. So that didn't make any sense to me, because in America, we're taught the meritocracy, the American dream. If anybody works hard, they can be successful. So that didn't make sense. It doesn't line up. And then I thought about my family and how, hey, I don't come from money, so how come we're middle class now? Looking back a couple generations, both sides of my family are from the Midwest and lived on farms, 10 to 12 siblings, living in poverty basically, even to, my dad's side, his mother raised 12 kids as a single mother back in that time. So that didn't make sense either. I thought, how is it that we're middle class? We worked hard, so what's wrong with other people? And those were my honest thoughts and reactions that were coming out based on what I had been taught in school and also what I had not been taught, right? So this question came up later as for the last 3 years I have had the opportunity through professional opportunities or professional relationships and otherwise to begin to analyze white privilege and my own family's experiences and my lived experiences and how they could or could not be different if I were not white, basically. So one thing that came clear really fast about white supremacy and white privilege is that just the numbers game, right? In 3 generations, my family went from extreme poverty to comfortable middle class. And then for other communities and people, let's say African American communities or families who are descendants of slaves, they have been here for many generations, 5 to 6, right? So how is it that maybe, at least in some situations, they are still living in poverty with that many generations, and my family did it in 3? And let's just assume that there's a whole lot of hard work going on, right? How does that compute? So to me, the answer was white privilege. And as I talked to family members and I looked at these things, I still saw the hardship that my family went through, and I still validated that. And it's still a part of who I am. I feel strongly that I come from hardworking, country people from farms in the Midwest. But I do know that there are these small things that added up over time called white privilege that helped my family get to where they are now. So small things like taking out a loan, or like how someone looks at you when you walk in a store or when you walk in for an interview, and when you show up as white versus a person of color or with a name on a paper that's not as easily readable or, like an Anglo-Saxon name supposedly. So those are just some things that I have thought about over the years and I want to offer up for you to think about. And I'd be happy to offer additional readings and TED Talks and things that have been useful to me in my own reflection. But I do want to validate and understand that it can feel like someone's taking away your identity or saying that you didn't work hard, right? Or that your family didn't work hard, or that you were just handed stuff, And that's not at all what I'm trying to say and what I have processed in my own reflection. And it did feel that way at first, But now that I've come around, it's no, my family did work hard, but let's look at the facts, Look what their hard work got them versus other communities and families I see today that are working so hard, and not getting those returns. So anyways, that's it for white privilege for now. The second thing is color blindness. So color blindness is this idea that we're all human beings and that everyone's the same and there's no inherent differences between anyone. All of that stuff is true, Unfortunately, there's a couple, like two problems with that thought process. So one of them is that if you're a person of color and you hear this, your lived experiences might not line up. I might disagree a lot. Like, well, in my life I've seen that if you have a different color of your skin than white, then you are treated differently. So that's not true. People are seen as different. You can't say that you don't see difference, right? So the other thing it can do is potentially like blanket over and erase people's identities and who they are, right? So an example, I was in a multicultural dialogue on race one time, and there were people all different ethnicities and genders in the room, and one person who was white and grew up in a biracial family said that they had been taught to not see race, and that they truly believe that they only see human beings and they don't see race, right? So when they said that, another person in the dialogue who's Japanese American said, well, when you say that, when you say you don't see my race, then you don't see me. You don't see who I am. You don't see my culture, my family, my lived experiences, the history that's associated with my family here, So it has the potential to kind of just like erase who people are and potentially, make people feel somewhat invisible. So this other option is called honoring diversity. So seeing difference but honoring it as a value and a beautiful thing, right? So one of your classmates, Rahel, I'm going to use your example. I hope it's okay. She had a beautiful analogy about honoring diversity where her son, who was noticing different skin colors and differences between kids at school, was asking his mom about it, and she asked him what colors flowers are, and he said all colors, and she said, yes, that's right, and they come together to make a beautiful bouquet, and that's how people are too. All different colors, and they're all beautiful, and it's, they're all special, right? So that's a wonderful example of honoring diversity, seeing the difference, right, but validating it. And I would offer this to you to do at your service learning sites. So if you're working with kids, oh, I see all kids and there's no color. You could be missing out on the uniqueness of the children around you, and their backgrounds and experiences, or maybe you have shared experiences and ethnicities with them. So not seeing who people are and who you're around is just kind of like erasing some really important information about who they are. So that's it for those three topics. Like I said, I just wanted to bring them up, and I'm super open to continuing to talk about them in any format, or offer up any additional resources for reading. So next week you have just one reading. It's really short, like 2 pages, and then a couple TED Talks and one optional TED Talk, because you have a good amount of assignments. So like usual, we try to get your grading back in a week. So let me know if you have any questions or comments, and otherwise, have a great week.